I've really got to talk to the organisers. How am I supposed to follow Lem? I mean, that's unbelievable. Did anyone else feel like he was talking just to you? Like, I felt like the whole time. Anyway, somehow I'm going to try follow Lem. Nothing I say rhymes though, so that's So yes, I'm a BBSRC research fellow at the Faculty of Biology, Medicine and Health. And what that means is I'm really just 2 small steps ahead of you down the academic career path, which is really, nowhere near the achievements of anyone else who's talked tonight. But I think it's why I'm here. I'm closer to you, so I might be able to give you some practical advice about the next couple of steps that you might need to make. This image here, I really wanted to start with this image here. This is the first image I took ever on a microscope during my PhD. I just started my PhD 10 years ago. And that's actually a blood vessel on the surface of a rat brain. Here, let me see if I can do this. See this? That is a blood vessel. Now, blood vessels are normally round, but it collapsed because it's not full of blood. And the blue that we're seeing is actually the stain of DNA. So that's life itself encoded into DNA, and that's what we're seeing. But the reason why I'm showing you this image is not to brag about how good my first image as a PhD student was, is to tell you that this is actually a complete failure. There's supposed to be a green and a red stain on this image, and it's supposed to tell me what kinds of cells are within this blood vessel and around this tissue. So it's 66% of failure, 33% of success, and I don't know if my percentage success has improved since this point. You will fail, and you will fail at least 66% of the time, I think, and it's about pushing through and seeing the beauty in your successes, because this is just damn beautiful, I think. Now, the title of my talk is Usain Bolt Shaves His Legs. Now, you might be wondering, what the hell am I talking about? But Usain Bolt is the fastest man to ever lived. He's won 9 gold medals. He's a complete athlete. He trains every day, but he shaves his legs. And that's because at the Olympic level, he is concerned about the friction that's caused as he sprints at 44 kilometers an hour, what those tiny hairs might do. So the point is that small things might make a big difference. It might be the difference between gold and not gold. Now, why I think this is a really good analogy is you might not realize this, but you guys are the Olympians of academia. Now, you laugh, but Manchester is one of the greatest universities in the world, and the PhD is one of the highest qualifications you can get. If learning was the Olympics, you guys would be in the Olympics. If learning was a sport, you guys would be in the Olympics. You're world leaders in learning. And at that level, we need to shave our legs. We need to worry about those small differences because they could make a huge difference. Now, this is a stories event, so I'm supposed to give you a brief story of my life. In 1986, I was born 19,000 kilometers away from here. I migrated here. From New Zealand, I was born in New Zealand. Then I grew some fantastic hair. This is me when I was 10 years old. Look at that hair. God, it's just amazing. Then I went to the University of Otago. It's the southernmost university in the world. It goes us, then the Antarctic. I used to surf a lot when I was an undergrad, and we would be surfing with penguins. That's how far south it is, literally. And you wouldn't believe it. During my undergrad in anatomy, I got even better hair. I couldn't believe it. Who would have thought it could have gone up from there? I then did my PhD in neuroscience, and I became a scientist, and I moved to Manchester. And after I moved to Manchester, I lost my hair. Now, I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but Manchester, what's in your water? What's going on here? So those are the major events of my life. I also got married, but it didn't quite make the cut to get on this board there. Now, I'm supposed to be telling you about my life experience and how that could maybe teach you how to take the next step, advise you on how to take the next couple of steps. But the difficult thing is that there's people in this room doing PhDs in humanities and engineering and science, and I'm sure the advice is really specific. Like, for example, this is the title of a PhD student who's currently doing their PhD in humanities, and it says, Political Concepts and Prefiguration, a corpus-assisted inquiry into democracy, politics, and community. Now, I know what some of those words are, but definitely not all those words. Now, my PhD student's title might be something like this: the role of interleukin-1 and immune metabolism in intracerebral hemorrhage. Those are two completely different languages. I really don't know. I racked my brain for weeks about what advice could I give to these two completely different people who are speaking completely different languages, and what career paths might be that are completely different. So while I was racking my brain over this, I still had to do my job, which is science. And here's something that I do, which is put mice into mazes, because we can learn from what they do in these mazes, maybe what's going on in their brain. Now, I love my mice. Now, a good scientist should love all their mice equally, but I do not. This is my mouse number 53. He's my favorite. He's such a character. And so he's going to walk down there. He's got a decision, left or right. And what decision he makes, we can start to infer stuff about what's going on in his brain. So let's see what he does. He goes left. Classic mouse number 53. What a classic maneuver, going left. He's such a character. And while I was doing this for hours on end, training my mice in their mazes, I realized, you know what? This is us. This is everyone in this room. This is anyone doing a PhD. They will come down to a fork, and there'll be a fork in the road, and they will either go left or right. And it's actually the accumulation of these forks in your road that dictate your career path and where you end up. We are these mice in this maze. Now, sometimes when you come to a fork in the road, the decision is you make the decision. For example, should you apply for university, left or right? And once you get to university, did you study, yes or no? These are decisions that you make. And you can imagine a map with all these forks in the road that lead up to different locations on the career landscape. Now, these are level because it doesn't really matter where you end up on this career landscape. All jobs are equal. If somebody says to you, you're a failure for doing this job, they're talking rubbish. All jobs are equal. So it actually doesn't matter what decisions you make along this career path, except in two situations. There are two situations where these decisions, your life decisions, really do matter. One is if you find yourself watching Love Island. You need to take a long, hard look at yourself and realize what mistakes you have made to end up in that situation. The next one is if you have a goal. If you have a goal, suddenly the decisions you make do matter. And this actually terrifies people, I think. And I meet a lot of PhD students who have no goal. And because as soon as you have a goal, there are right decisions and wrong decisions. You are either taking a step towards your goal or you're taking a step away from your goal. And so it's terrifying. And the other thing you'll notice, if you can imagine going up the page, is time. The earlier you know your goal, the earlier you have an idea about your goal, the more you can make conscious decisions towards your career path. If you don't have a goal, suddenly these branches start to disappear from potential opportunities. A classic example might be, I'm currently 33 years old, I'm 75 kilograms, and I'm not very good at rugby. The chances of me becoming an All Black professional rugby player, as hard as it is as a New Zealander to admit it, is zero right now for me. That career path is gone. Maybe if at the age of 5, I decided that maybe I could be a professional rugby player, I did all the protein powder, I did absolutely everything I could to become an All Black, maybe there's a chance. But if I didn't have that goal, it's too late now. It is too late. So for me, one thing that I think was important in my life was having a goal early. And this is when I had my goal. So this is me, 6 years old on the right-hand side there. My brother in the middle, he's 2 years older than me, and that's Bertie, our dog. He was a bit of an idiot, and we should have guessed that he was an idiot because he's an Australian Terrier. Trust me. That was a cheap one, admittedly. Okay, so my brother in the middle, by the age of 6, had read The Lord of the Rings. He had a dictionary, and he had the Lord of the Rings novels, and he would read, and he would get to a word that he didn't know, and he would open the dictionary and look it up. Genius. My sister was the same. Me, at the age of 7, was refusing to read, and there was questions about whether I even could read. My parents would say, go pick a book, and we'll read it for you, and I would, and I would always pick a picture book with no words in it. And then one day a teacher said, so my parents were like, well, we got 1 dud, 2 successes, you know, that's 66% success rate. That's better than most, you know what I'm saying? Most people get 33% success rate. So they had one dud, that was me, and then the teacher said, he seems to like science, why don't you get him a science book? And they got me this book, the Oxford Children's Pocket Book of Facts. And this is the greatest book of all time, I kid you not. I took this out the other day, and my wife went to bed, and I kept reading it till about 2 in the morning, because it is still amazing. This is Wikipedia before Wikipedia existed. And I'll just give you a little taste there of some of the gems inside this puppy. In 18th century China, Pekingese dogs were so pampered that human wet nurses were employed to breastfeed the puppies. What? Right? You've got to be kidding me. And I read this book every day, much to the annoyance of my family, almost to the point of violence on occasion, because I'd be like, did you know every 10 seconds a drop of blood contains 100 million red blood cells? What? 100 million? Lobster's blood is pale blue. What are we talking about here? I'm going to forget you guys. I'm going to go keep reading this book. And after I read this book, I knew, oh boy, I knew I wanted to be a scientist. I loved the world. I didn't quite know what scientist I want to be. There was early dark periods, you know, in my early teens where I wanted to be a geologist. But I pushed through that, and I got to biology as the greatest science of all time. And so I think something that really dictated my career was having a goal early. I wanted to be a scientist since as long as I can remember, since this book, and I think that really helped me take those steps down the right Y-maze path towards being a scientist. However, there's not just decisions you make. There's decisions about you. There's decisions people make about you. Were you accepted into the PhD program, for example? And there will be a lot of these. Did you get into a PhD program? Did you get selected for a job, selected for a talk, awarded a grant, offered a leadership role, invited speaker, awarded a prize, offered your goal? You know, so there's a lot of decisions made about you. And what you might be thinking out there is, what can you do about those? These people on the panels, the employers, you know, the people that are making these decisions, they'll be looking at you objectively, they will take this data in, and they will make a rational decision about whether or not you're the best candidate. Now, I'm here to convince you that that's probably not the case. And I'll show you some research that shows how subjective some of these decisions are. This is going to be a graph, I'll reveal it soon, about the percentage chance that you will be given parole. And this is in a study based on prisoners who get parole. So imagine you're a prisoner, you come up to a panel, they adjudicate whether you will get to go free on parole or go back in jail. Now on the x-axis, along the bottom, is the time of day. And so on the y-axis is the percentage chance of getting to go free, on the x-axis on the time of day, and you imagine that this panel is going to be objective. Is this prisoner got good behavior? Has he reformed? Etc., etc. But let's have a look at this graph. Doesn't look, oh, that level does it. Actually, what you can see is you've got a great chance in the morning, then that chance crashes to almost zero. Then it kicks back up, then it crashes to almost zero. Then it kicks back up and it crashes almost zero. This doesn't look like a rational bunch of decisions. All these prisoners are going to be roughly the same throughout the day. And what we find out is these dotted lines are lunch and tea. So the time since I've last eaten seems to be a better dictator of whether you get to go free rather than your good performance in prison. People are subjective. These decisions are not made on a rational basis. So I guess my advice is arrange your job interviews in the morning. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? But what I really want to say is that minor factors can have a big influence on your career progression. So here's perhaps a more relevant example of minor factors that have a decision affect your career progression. This is they took CT scans, which are basically X-rays, and they divided them randomly, 380, they divided them randomly into two groups. On half of them, they put a photo of the person's face that they took the X-ray from. On the other half, there was no photo. Then they gave all of those to 15 radiologists and asked them to look to see where this injury was and whether there was a break or not. Now, when a radiologist looks at an X-ray, they're looking for the injury. So if you've got sore ribs, they're looking for cracked ribs. But they're also looking for what's called incidental findings. So if you take a chest X-ray for cracked ribs, you might actually see a density in their lungs, which could be cancer. So then they looked at the rates of incidental findings from this study. And what they found was you were 5 times more likely to spot that incidental finding in the group that had the photo included on their X-ray. That's the only difference. A human face was the only difference between these results, and they were 5 times more likely to spot an incidental finding. The radiologists were more meticulous in reviewing the scans when the photo was included, and when asked why, they reported feelings of empathy and actually liking the patient. So I guess what I'm saying, get your face out there. Get it seen. Make sure you're in the group with the X-ray with the photo on top. Get out there. How do you get out there? Public engagement, engaging in your research community, shaking hands, cold emails, meeting people, being there. But remember, it's just shaving your legs, right? Let's remember that it's shaving your legs. So shaving your legs, outreach, public engagement, university service, collaborative network. But if I was to shave my legs right now, I'm not competing in the Olympics in the 100-meter race. You still have to do the aerobics and the squats. And for me, that would be doing science, publishing papers, and winning grants. But the 50-50 decisions, the difference between perhaps being on one side of the decision compared to being on the other, could be the shaving the legs, could be the outreach, the public engagement, the university service, and the collaborative network. And let me show you how on a knife edge some of these decisions are. So I sat in on a grant review board. This is a board of about 40 people that are reading proposals, and they are going to give out £500,000 to £1 million to the people that they deem are doing research that's good enough, right? They were told to rate these on a scale of 0 to 6, right? And now let's see how many of these applications received each rating. And this is what it looked like. Most of the research got a 5.4 or a 5.3 out of 6, but they were not funded. The ones that were funded got a 5.5 out of 6. Now, there was no guidance written down anywhere that dictated what was a 5.4 and what was a 5.5. There was guidance about what's a 4 and what's a 5, but that scale virtually wasn't used. It was the difference between 5.5 and 5.4. Now, if that panel knew what you did to the community, knew your face, even just saw you on a tweet, maybe you retweeted them, maybe that would be the difference between getting a 5.4 and a 5.5, and that could be the difference between your career or not. So remember to shave your legs. Now, this is my personal example, and it was mentioned before. It was the 3-minute thesis competition. So the 3-minute thesis is you're explaining to high school students and the public your research in 3 minutes. Now, the first year of my PhD, I entered this, didn't make the finals. Second year, didn't make the finals. I went back and looked at my presentations. One of them had a baby smoking marijuana on it. What was I thinking? I was terrible. But again, 66% failure rate. On the third time, I did a good presentation, and I got first in New Zealand, and then I went to Australia, and I got the audience award, voted winner by the audience award. Now, 6 months after that, it was awesome fun, and I was talking to university students, and I was talking to high school students, explaining my research, and it was just an absolute hoot, and it was really awesome to get out there and talk about my research. 6 months later, I had a postdoc interview about getting a postdoc, and I sit down, and the first thing he says to me, the guy interviewing me, is, "Tell me about your 3-minute thesis presentation." To me, I immediately was the radiologist X-ray sheet with a photo on it. He knew who I was. He said with a smile, "Tell me about this thing that you did." And I really felt like I was on the upper edge. Now, when he contacted my references, he actually said it was 50-50 between me and another guy, but I ended up getting that postdoc position because I shaved my legs. Just to be clear, I don't actually shave my legs. It's a metaphor, okay? So let me just give you some quick examples so you can get some hard ideas about where you could go from here. You could have a website, a blog, you could do charity volunteering, you could do public talks at elderly homes and primary schools and pubs. You could do conference organization, departmental and school events like speaking to your department. You could be a representative for your students or your early career researchers. You could do seminar series organization. If your department has a seminar series, try get in there, because then you're talking to some of the biggest wigs in the field as you invite them to do a seminar. You could visit other institutes. I'm a huge fan of this. Conferences, cold emails to establish collaborators. It's real knack emailing someone out of the blue, but it's really important. Now, when you look at this list, you also notice that actually, these are actually fantastic endeavors that are extremely rewarding in themselves. Not only that, this community right here, this is a community. This community depends on volunteers. This was organized by 4 PhD students, this event. And so by volunteering and being part of the community, you're actually giving back to this community. It's an amazing thing you can do. And the exposure, as a side effect, the exposure could be the difference between some of these major decisions that will be made about you. So now you've got this question. You're the mouse in the maze. Are you going to go watch Love Island or benefit you and the community by doing these things? Let's see what Mouse 53 does. He always knows what to do. Mouse 53, I love you. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. But I would also like to thank these 4 people. These 4 people gave back to the community and organized this event, and they deserve their faces up there. So please look at those faces. Look at those faces. Look at them. Look at those faces. Thank you very much.